Morning, friends. Welcome to meeting of your United Lodge of Theosophists. As all of you know, we meet at this hour each Sunday, and also twice a month. And we have a second meeting today, following this meeting, in which we'll be studying "Living in Life" by B.P. Wadia, the gentleman there on the wall. For those of you who are not aware, a few words about the Declaration, and basically, it's the attempt of the students here to carry forth the tasks that they have taken up, the responsibility that they have assumed instead of the authority. The authority itself is within the pages of the books, and that's pointing once again to the authority that comes from within each student, and he or she picks up and carries forth that which they think that they can do to carry out the task. There's never any request for contributions, any attempt to proselytize. Every inquiry is free to research the message, look at the messenger, and eventually, if they look at the messenger and the message, they will eventually find the masters. So there is the message, the masters, and the messenger. We try to stick to the presentation that they put forth some time ago and hold true to that line. So that's the attempt that these students here have taken upon themselves to do. We have another meeting next Sunday. At that time, we'll be studying What is God? Today's talk is The Real Christmas, and the reading comes from the Light of Asia. Pretty lengthy, so you have to bear with me. Okay. Low to dawn, sprang with Bood's victory. Low in the east, flame the first fires of beauteous day poured forth through fleeting foes of night's black drapery. High in the widening blue, the herald star faded to paler silver as there shot brighter the brightest stars, brighter the brightest bars of rosy gleam, across the gray. Far off the shadowy hills saw the great sun before the world was ware, and donned their crowns of crimson, flower by flower, felt the warm breath of morn and gain unfold. Their tender lids over the spangled grass swept the swift footsteps of the lovely light, turning the tears of night to joyous gems, decking the earth with radiance, broidening the sinking storm clouds with a golden fringe, gilding the feathers of the palms which waved glad salutations, dotting beams of gold into the glades, touching with magic wand the stream to rippled ruby in the brake, finding the mild eyes of the antelopes, and saying, "It is day," in nested sleep, touching the small heads under many a wing, and whispering, children praise the light of day, where their piped anthems of all the birds, the coil's fluted song, and Bubbles' hymn, the morning mourn of the painted thrush, the tweeter of the shuri birds spotting forth to find the honey ere the bees be out. The gray crows crawl, the pirates scream, the strokes of the green hammersmith, the mired's chirp, the never-finished love talk of the doves. Yea, and so holy was the influence of that high dawn which came with victory, that far and near in homes of men there spread an unknown peace. The slayer hid his knife, the robber laid his plunder back, the shelf counted full tales of coins. All evil hearts grew gentle, kind hearts gentler, as the balm of the divinest daybreak lighteth earth. Kings at fierce war called truce. The sick men leaped, laughing from beds of pain. The dying smiled, as though they knew the happy morn was sprung from fountains farther than the utmost east, and over the hearts of sad Yasadora sitting forlorn at Prince Daughter's bed, came sudden bliss as if love should not fail, nor such vast sorrows missed to end in joy. So glad the world was, though it wist not why, that over desolate wastes went swooning songs of mirth, the voice of bodiless prets and boots. Foreseeing booed, and Davis in the air cried, "It is finished, finished!" And the priest stood with the wandering people in the streets, watching those golden splendors flood the sky, and saying, "There hath happened some mighty thing." Also ran the jungle grew that day, friendships amongst the creatures, spotted deer, brows fearless, where the tigress fed her cubs, and cheetahs lapped the pool beside bucks. Under the eagle's rock the brown hares scored, while his fierce beak but preened an idle wing. The snake shunned all his jewels in the beam, with deadly fangs in sheath. The shirk let pass the nestling finch. The emerald halcyons sat dreaming, while the fishes played beneath. Nor hawked the murops through though the butterflies, crimson and blue and amber, fitted thick. Around his perch the spirit of our Lord lay potent upon man and bird and beast, ere while he mused under the Bodhi tree, glorified with the conquest, gained for all, and lighted by a light greater than days. And that came from the Light of Asia. And now I'll talk the real Christmas.
Friends, fitting for this season, we find messages from the Masters about the universal Savior, the bringer of light. Every country has its saviors. He who dissipates the darkness of ignorance by the help of the torch of science, thus discovering to us the truth, deserves that title as a mark of our gratitude, quite as much as he who saves us from death by healing our bodies. Such an one awakens in our benumbed souls the faculty of distinguishing the true from the false by kindling a divine flame, hitherto absent, and he has the right to our grateful worship, for he has become our Creator. What matters the name or the symbol that personifies the abstract idea, if that idea is always the same and is true? Whether the concrete symbol bears one title or another, whether the Savior in whom we believe has for an earthly name, like Krishna, Buddha, or Jesus, we have but to remember one thing. Symbols of divine truths were not invented for the amusement of the ignorant. They are the alpha and omega of philosophic thought. And going on, the path shown in Theosophy leads to truth. It points to the universal solvent, the thread given by the Master to the disciple who ventures into the mysteries of being, the torch that lights him through the dangerous maze of life. Forever the enigma of the Sphinx. But the light thrown by this torch can be discerned only by the eye of the awakened soul. By our spiritual senses, it blinds the eye of the materialist as the sun blinds that of the owl. Today marks the winter solstice for the year 2014. At our annual winter solstice, the days are the shortest, and darkness is more upon the face of the earth than ever. It was on the 21st of December that the ancients thought the sun gods went down under the earth to help the souls, the seeds. imprisoned there. Remaining for 3 days, they came forth triumphant in all their glory on December 25. So the coming of the sun, as it returns from its journey southward to the north again, was understood by the ancients to be the birth of the sun. Behind the sun, as behind every body or person, there is spirit, life, and intelligence. With the return of the sun comes a spiritual, a mental, a moral growth, and uplifting. Ideas taken hold of and carried into expression during this time have 10 times the power they would at another time. So the ancients thought of the sun as a life giver to all growing things, but they knew it to be only a symbol of the true sun, the one life, the self. They knew that the self acts only through beings, and that what is seen as our sun was just an instrument for the true unseen sun. And when they sang their hymns to the sun, it was with the thought of acting for the self in every heart. To quote from the Eternal Verities, that which giveth substance to the universe and to ourselves, and from each with which all doth proceed, and unto which all must return, that thou art. In the golden vase of thine earthly body, may the pure light of the spiritual sun shine forth, that thou mayst know the truth and do thy whole duty on the journey back to the sacred seat. Over time, people came to think of all the forces and beings in the sun as making up one being, which they worship as the sun god, much as some think of God as a great good man outside themselves. This is getting very straightforward and simple. It's basically for children, but we adults can relate to this as well. Rather than the real self within each and every being, which is where we really find God. The Catholic Church Fathers chose December 25 for the birthday of Jesus, some 400 years after his birth. No one really knew by then when he did come, neither the day nor the year. Only the very wise know when he came, because they know the cycles. And in accordance with the cycle, a great one comes about every 2100 years. So ancient observations of this time of the year were twofold. What we might refer today as esoteric, and exoteric. So Buddha used this twofold approach, as did Plato. HPB implemented this approach in the modern Theosophical movement as well, but many of even those who call themselves Theosophists are ignorant of the twofold existence. The esoteric approach involves initiation into the mysteries of those who are ready. The exoteric is for the others, or the masses. Exoteric celebrations among the Egyptians included singing hymns to the image of an infant, symbolizing their sun god, then born again. Today's custom of decorating with holly and ivy was derived from the ancient practices of the pagan Druids, that sylvan spirits might flock to the evergreens and remain unnipped by the frost till a milder season. Use of evergreen trees, wreaths, and garlands as a symbol of eternal life was an ancient custom of the Egyptians, Chinese, and Hebrews. This tradition evolved into today's custom of the annual Christmas tree, a custom brought over to this country by German settlers. The ancient message of the Gnostics, upon which Christianity and other modern religions were based, was the same as the message of the Neoplatonist and the Theosophy presented to the world by HPB as a messenger of the masters. This message has the first key that one has to use in order to unravel the secrets involved in the mystic name of Christ. It is a key which unlocked the door to the ancient mysteries of the primitive Aryans, Sabians, and Egyptians. Quote, "I am in the hearts of all men," unquote, says Krishna, speaking in the Logos in the Bhagavad Gita. Quote, "Know ye not that ye are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you?" As St. Paul. In the Gospel according to Luke, we may learn that the worthy were those who had been initiated into the mysteries of the Gnosis, and who were accounted worthy to obtain that resurrection from the dead into the life. In other words, they were the great adepts of whatever religion, and the words apply to all those who, without being initiates, strive and succeed through personal efforts to live the life and to attain the naturally ensuing spiritual illumination in blending their personality, the Son, with their individual divine spirit, the God within. The more one studies the ancient religious texts, the more one finds that the groundwork of the New Testament is the same as the groundwork of the Vedas, of the Egyptian theology, and of the Messianian allegories. But human faiths contend with one another, locked in mortal conflict through the ages by the illusion of differences. The struggle is violent, for every old allegiance knows that its survival depends upon the body and not the spirit of human beliefs. Chief among these delusions of our age is the Jesus image. "Be ye perfect," he taught, "even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect." He came to spread the tidings of salvation through self-knowledge. Yet some have affirmed in his name that knowledge is unattainable and that all hope lies in blind belief. He came not to deny the law, but to fulfill it. Yet some of his priests turned his mission into a unique event which made belief in law impossible. He came to demonstrate the Christ in all, yet so misunderstood was his example, and so misdirected were the efforts of his interpreters, that few have been able to identify themselves with the Christ ideal. If the West were to focus more on the divinity within each person and understand that the Christ story goes beyond the life of one divine being, the meaning of the life of Jesus, his sufferings, and his sacrifice would at last become clear. So the death which the future has in store for the Jesus image is no death at all, but a transfiguration. From son of the Father, he must become a brother of man, one of many such brothers, and thus in reality human experience. No teacher has suffered a fate more awful than Jesus, and penalties exacted by those he came to help. This fate will continue until man has come to realize that the purpose of the coming of great adepts like Jesus is to show us by example that we have the power within us to become like them. HPB points out that Christ, the true esoteric Savior, is no man, but the divine principle in every human being. He who strives to resurrect the Spirit crucified in him by his own terrestrial passions and bury it deep in the sepulchre of his sinful flesh, he who has the strength to roll back the stone of matter door of his own inner sanctuary, he has the risen Christ in him, whether heathen or Christian by birth. Theosophists refuse to materialize and degrade that which is the purest and grandest ideal, that is the symbol of the immortal divine spirit in man, whether it be called Horus, Krishna, Buddha, or Christ. The primitive writers of what we now know as the Gospels knew the truth and the whole truth, but some of their successors had only dogma and form, which lead to hierarchical power rather than to the spirit of Christ's teachings. So the Christus principle doesn't just blossom in us. It takes lifetimes of self-induced and self-devised methods to bring out this principle. Our mind is lighted up, and it's up to us to proceed from here. We advanced through natural impulse before it was lighted up. So so regarding the Christos principle, pages 58 and 66 of the Ocean of Theosophy state, and when we either wholly or now and then become consciously united with Buddhi, the spiritual soul, we behold God, as it were. This is what the ancients all desired to see, but what the moderns do not believe in, the latter preferring rather to throw away their own right to be great in nature, and to worship an imaginary God made up solely of their own fancies and not very different from weak human nature. Although reincarnation is a law of nature, the complete trinity of Atma, Buddhi, Manas does not fully incarnate in this race. They use and occupy the body by means of the entrance of Manas, the lowest of the three, and the other two shine upon it from above, constituting the God in heaven. This was symbolized in the old Jewish teaching about the heavenly man who stands with his head in heaven and his feet in hell. The head, Atma and Buddhi, are yet in heaven, and the feet, Manas, walk in hell, which is the body and physical life. We often put together the sevenfold nature of man, something like this. These are the lower principles, Atma, Buddhi, Manas, are the higher principles of the real man that goes from life to life. At death, the lower four, which is the passions and desires, etc., dissipate. So the godlike Trinity, being in full possession of the entire mass of matter, will be perfected and raised up for the next step, which is the higher three here. This is the real meaning of the word made flesh. It was so grand a thing, as in the case of such persons as Jesus and Buddha, as to be looked upon as a divine incarnation. And out of this, too, comes the idea of the crucifixion. For Manas is thus crucified for the purpose of raising up the thief to paradise. We often talk about Manas, although Manas is one principle, we break it out and talk about the lower and the upper to illustrate this point. The lower Manas that we develop from throughout our current life and perfect becomes the Manas that stays with us throughout eternity. So the celebration of the birth of Jesus was made to correspond with this old knowledge of the past and ancient observances. We seem to carry on with the observances in some shape or form, but we have forgotten or lost the knowledge we had. We have forgotten, and we do not apply to ourselves the fact of the recurrence of this real Christmas time. The season not only of the physical renewal of the earth and all beings, and also, but also return to the inner life of impulse of a spiritual kind. At Easter, we celebrate the ascension of spirit out of matter. At Christmas time, when spirit has fully descended into matter and is ripe for spread throughout matter. We talk about cycles, cycles as larger cycles and smaller cycles. The cycle of a year goes something like this. At the bottom, when the sun has fully descended into matter, that's 1221. That's where we're at or now in celebrating Christmas, because the sun is coming out of matter, or we ourselves, our higher selves, are coming out of matter. And at somewhere around 321 is the Easter time. Somewhere around 621, we're up here, and then somewhere 921, starting to fall, we're there. So at Christmas time, at this time of rebirth, the life of the earth is young, and the inner life has its rejuvenance and its growth. We focus primarily on man, but we're also saying here that man is a microcosm of the macrocosm, as above, so below. So we're talking about the universe as well as the man. So when we think from the cosmic level, we think of the whole of life. We find that day and night, summer and winter, life and death are the seasons of nature. But the perceiver, the experiencer of these seasons, is the self-conscious man, who lives when the body dies, who is awake when the body rests at night, who is continually observant when the body is awake or asleep. The man is conscious every moment. He sees recurrent waves of activity of one kind, then rest, then another kind, then rest again. He sees the return of his thoughts and his feelings, reinforced and strengthened on the second coming, or reduced and weakened, according to the degree of energy he has given them. Always there is a return of impressions, from hour to hour, from month to month, from year to year. For us, a tide of recession has prevailed through many centuries. We are living in the Iron Age, which was preceded by better ages, known as the Gold, the Silver, and the Bronze Ages. This Iron Age we are living in, an age of spiritual darkness with many temptations to indulge in selfish actions, but also many opportunities to help. Not only must we pass through this Iron Age, but we must start a new Golden Age with all that we have gained. The more the self-conscious man has gone into matter, the more he has closed his spiritual doors. But we must go through the stages of matter and emerge from them. There are reasons for that, and we have talks about that. Bringing with him all the knowledge he has gained. And not only is his effort to gain knowledge for himself, but also to impart his feeling and understanding to the kingdoms below him. A tide comes for the appearance of beings greater than we are, greater because at some time they took advantage of the rising tide to go far beyond where the ordinary man found himself able to go. These beings come at certain great seasons, as the heavens tell the story in the messianic cycle. There has arrived once more the season to rise with. If we make up our minds to do it, we can follow the path of our great predecessors, the great saviors of the world, the great saviors of all times. They are all beings in the same nature who come among us, and as was said of Jesus, and all things become like unto us, that they may impart to us something of their great knowledge and point us to the path they followed. Always the object of their coming is that we, in time, may become as they are. We find Jesus saying in John 14:12 that we can do greater things than he did, and referring to us as gods in John chapter 10, verse 34. What greater gift can we be given at Christmas or at any time than to be shown the path for bringing forth from within ourselves the perfect natures we already have, and to serve as they serve. We will stop here for discussion. We'll add one thing though. This student is of the opinion that one way we can serve is to set an example by reacting in reacting in positive ways to our karma, which has been set up, which we've set up ourselves to a great degree, or that we need to have for our learning experience, as did that 95-year-old Tuskegee airman who left his body last week. After dealing with extraordinarily high standards in the face of those who would have them fail, and then becoming a homeowner through the real estate trade that he went into after being denied a home loan, he overcame by turning what others may perceive as obstacles into opportunities. So I'll leave it at this. There's a lot more that could be said, but you guys will certainly bring it up, I believe. So I will turn it over to you. Yes, could you please get these mics?
Sorry.
We covered everything?
Oh.
Gary?
I'm not sure I understood it correctly, but it seemed as if in the Eternal Verities, perhaps, you were mentioning that there was a cycle for the great saviors or teachers of 2,100 years.
Well, the Eternal Verities did not put that in there because it was written primarily for children, but elsewhere in the documents there, it indicates that a cycle of about 2,100 years is what occurs between great ones.
So are we expecting a return of someone in the same level as Jesus?
We don't know.
100 years now.
Maybe, perhaps. Yeah, that's what I was thinking exactly coming in, Jared, because we're about 100 years out. It said that we don't know exactly when Jesus was born and when his ministry occurred. It could have been maybe 100 BC. So counting from 100 BC, we're still almost there. We might not reach it in our lifetime unless we're a master and we live longer periods of time. But the point, I think you asked a question which this student was also thinking about coming in. About 2,100 years out would be about 100 years now, give or take a bit. So we could well be in for another great one to come. But to add to that, we have a student in front row here.
The 2,100-year cycle, isn't that moving in the zodiacal signs?
Yes, that's it. We're trying to get through this fairly in a few minutes, but when we're looking at the zodiac, I mean, we're talking about the signs of the 12 signs of the zodiac. So at a 2,100-year period is what we're talking about there. But it also says that a great one comes about every that many years.
But they're not always known to the external world.
Absolutely. Well, we have masters with us right now that we don't know about because they're out there doing things for our benefit that we're not aware of.
Yeah, it just occurs to me that some people think that Tsongkhapa was a reincarnation of the Buddha,
Mhm.
and he was about 2,000, maybe 2,100 years after Buddha,
Mhm.
1375. And then again, about the same time or a little later, they had the Buddha of the North, otherwise known as Swedenborg,
Mm.
who Madame Blavatsky was quite admiring of. So the cycles may not always be geographically the same as well.
Exactly. This timing that we talk about is really man-made. There's no such thing as time and space or whatever divisions except for the divisions we make for our own understanding. So we're not talking about a precise measurement here in our terms. It just gives you some general idea that we have great ones that come before us, which some of who we think we identify, others we don't. In fact, we have examples of greatness coming through many people. It may or may not have been fully developed yet in every aspect, but they're on the way.
We have so few here today, as in other maybe theosophical lodges and societies throughout the world, and we have so many in churches going along with the story that's been put out. So is that an indication of how great I don't know if I want to use the word cover up or suppression of truth has been, to the extent that the many versus the few, the many that are sitting in the pews, in the audience, and being proselytized by the priests, primarily with the exoteric story instead of the esoteric story. Could you speak on that war, if we can call it a war, that's gone on down the centuries that have led to the few versus the many, as we see?
You're asking about the Bhagavad Gita, if this is, I understand your question correctly, which is this right here is often called the greatest of all wars, where we have a dialogue primarily between Krishna and Arjuna, Arjuna being who we all are in these bodies. And you can interpret it in different ways, but this is one way of interpreting it, and I think this may be what you're getting at. That it takes this experience to get around to understanding many of what we think are the complexities, but the student understands that once you get to understanding it, it's pretty simple. You know, we have the master plan, or whatever you want to call it, out there. Out shoots a spark and comes down around a circle through matter, raising. It's a cycle, raising matter to the spiritual level, if you will. The spirit gets entwined in matter, and coming back around to join forces with the one totally. I mean, we should be joining forces now in the body with that great plan of nature, which we really affect, if very minutely, by our actions individually, which translates to community action, national action, and world action.
Well,
so it is there for our benefit. Nature is there for our benefit, it said.
Well, I was speaking along those lines as well, but as you quoted from John, Jesus was saying, you will do bigger and better things than I, and then there's references about the God within you. So if the many that are sitting in the in the pews or in the structures called churches or synagogues or mosques, if that message, why hasn't it resonated with those people? If the Son of God, and some people refer to Jesus as God, now here's God, Son, or whoever, telling you that you can do bigger and better things than I. That's in their book. And so why is it so difficult for those who are receiving this message to accept that and deal with it? Have they been suppressed so long that they have been dubbed into thinking that I can't do that? You see what I'm trying to say? I'm trying to bring that idea out.
this has been alluded to in the talk by saying that some along the way who have gained power have done it actually for the power, have done it for whatever reason, for physical, for material wealth, or whatever the case may be, and muddied up the message. You can say that, or you can say that this was really part of the opportunity we're supposed to have to come down in the matter and become enlightened in that process. Okay, we have another comment up here on that. And then the church itself is, on this earth, is made up of humans. Mm-hmm. Many of them trying to do the best they can, but there is history of those who went astray and caused a lot of problems.
Well, we have to also understand that vicarious atonement, according to the writings, has brought about the opposite result, and that nothing can save the Western world but this philosophy that we are talking about today. Karma and reincarnation has been wiped out every human memory, and the other substitute has been inserted, that we are pitiful, sinful, little human beings not able to soar higher. So when you remember that thousands of years have gone into wiping from our memory the greatness that we each hold in our own heart, then this opposite result has come about. So the writings are for the more intelligent aspects of nature, and those are obviously exhibited through men. She didn't say, I'm writing it for everyone. She addresses it to the few. So this is not conversion. This is the soul awakening internally to its own potential powers.
You're talking about that quiet voice that we suppress as humans because of the things that we're faced with.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also the separation of this idea of, we have Jesus here, we have ourselves here, we can never be so great. When he said that.
Well, internally one has to grasp it, and a lot of people are not willing to put any work into it. She also tells us this is not for somebody who's lazy. This requires persistent effort to understand it, to make it your own, to give it out, and to make it your own in the sense that you internalize it, but it has a power to come out with its own volition.
Exactly.
So until we make it our own and we exhibit it in our daily life, that power we cannot exert. It is only available when we have suppressed the personality for the benefit of the individuality, which is the self, which is united everywhere. It's one life, you said at the beginning of your talk. We look individualized, but then esoterically, that inner principle that we each have in our own heart, the Christ principle, or however you name it, is one. It looks separate, but it isn't. And until we internalize that and exhibit it in our life, then we really get to know it.
Yeah, HPV inferred that throughout, including the first couple paragraphs that we read, which was from her hand, that we don't. It apparently, in this student's view, especially the West, does not understand that unity of all that we're all from, and when we exhibit as individuals certain characteristics, like the great ones do, like Jesus did, like Buddha did, etc. These are not individual powers. These beings have perfected working with nature to this point, and that the powers that they have are available to everyone. But we have to understand that process. And Theosophy is called it's a philosophy of the soul. It's So it's set out so that we can understand all of this process that we're talking about today.
Well, I
We
think-
get.
sorry.
Did you
just wanted to add that
follow
our
up?
society does not really encourage deep thinking, meditation, or quietude, and those qualities are necessary. When you look at the East, the children are able to sit quietly and imbibe their own soul. In the West, gadgetry everywhere, computers everywhere. People get bored every 2 seconds if they're not doing something. That is not how you get to listen to your inner soul. The inner life is the quietude. So we need to impart these qualities to our children, that they need to be quiet, they need to be able to sit and imbibe, they need to be able to attune themselves to nature, but our materialistic society does not encourage any of it.
We also learn that the East and the West can learn from each other. The East, you absolutely, you hit a key point there, which was the training of the children is way different, to the point where they should sit down and be quiet. But in the West, we're very immersed in the material world. But by the same token, HPB chose to come here and be the messenger of the masters, with the understanding, we're down here in the bowels of the Iron Age right now, but the dawning of the new civilization has also been cited in the Western, maybe not the United States per se as a government, but in this part of the earth.
Well,
we need to all work together is what the bottom line is.
on one of the covers of, I believe it was the Theosophical Movement, there's a quote by Madame Blavatsky that speaks about, she says, in a few centuries more, I'm paraphrasing it, that the Orthodox religions will be shown to be, well, they will just dissipate or disappear, as she names the major world religions. So, in a few centuries more, but I'm looking at the present, well, the now, and I'm saying that this war that I refer to in terms of, you find today, you find younger folks, or probably in this enlightened age, quote, enlightened, going beyond church dogma, but then at the same time, you finding people running to the churches, young and old, something like that. So it seems that there's this tug or push and pull sort of thing, because young folks come up and their parents are sometimes pushing them, that you see the violence and everything going on, and this is the way, they don't necessarily question for themselves. And so what is it going to take to, I guess science maybe will probably insert itself to the reason mind, as Tuja said, this is Theosophy. It's the inheritance of every person, but yet she states here is dedicated to the few. I guess those few who are willing to think for themselves. But I see science. Could science be that wedge that can be inserted to sort of like break the hold of religion, per se? I guess that's one.
Science has moved along in the last 100 years. It is some central speed at a very slow pace, but at least it's in the hundreds of years, really. But the fundamental basis of science, if you can't measure it, if you can't repeat it, then it doesn't apply. So science has basically taken away some of the philosophy. This philosophy here includes science, religion, and philosophy. So we're talking about a combination of those approaches. And yes, science could hold a key to the Western mind, at least, because if the Western, if you can't see it visibly or whatever, if you can't repeat it, according to science, it's not. It doesn't exist. Well, we know ourselves, having studied Theosophy, that nothing comes from nothing. And most any, I'm gonna pick on a profession here. If I could think, the name of Ed Jones is, what is he? Not an engineer. No. He's well, anyway, he's kind of an engineer. I'll pick on him. You know, he's very scientifically minded, if you will, and he, you know, you introduce this to someone who's been in science for 50 years or whatever. They don't relate to it because they understand that nothing comes from nothing when you're talking about on a physical level. But when you're saying, okay, where does this stuff come from? Well, somebody made it. Somebody made it out of what? So you can't, you know, to get back to understanding science properly in this student's view, you have to understand that process through the invisible world as well. In fact, the major part of the world could be invisible, like an iceberg. You know, most of that part is underneath the water. So, Kathy had a comment.
Yeah, I just had a comment that everything in the world is, you know, dual. It's a mixture, really, of positive and negative, of spiritual and physical, of good and evil. For what that's worth, I just wanted to make a comment about the technology. It's that's, you know, the gadgetry. It's the egos that have come into incarnation in our generation and the ones after us who brought these ideas and this technology into being. It's not inherently good or bad. And just as an example, you know, we found an app called Insight Timer. It's just a timer, but what it does is, because it's connected to the web, everybody else who's using that timer, it's for meditation. When you're done, it says you've just meditated with 1,432 other people, right, and are meditating right now along with you. How encouraging is that?
A sense
It's
of belonging.
probably
You're getting a sense of belonging is what you're talking
exactly. It can be, you know, a gateway to unity, so to speak.
Absolutely.
And of course, there are more people meditating than have a gadget and use that specific app. But the point being that it can be used for, maybe not transcendental, that might be too strong a word, but it can be used for spiritual, for connection, for unity.
What you're saying is it's a tool. It's like a wrench in your toolbox. You can use it for good purposes or bad purposes.
Real meditation.
Oh, absolutely not.
Real meditation is not based on
beneficial
gadgets.
as well. Yes, absolutely.
Real meditation is actually has to be in solitude. You're trying to contact your inner self. How are you able to do that in company with a lot of people? Do you assume that they know how to do it, or that you're going to attune telepathically to their mind? And how do you know where they are in their own evolutionary process? So this is a very private, personal thing that you're trying to do. It does not require others for you to succeed.
No, in fact, you know, it must be personal in order to be there. That could be a step in the direction, or it could be an impediment, depending on how you view whatever it is, how you view that too. But I think we are going to stop it unless somebody has something that they're burning to say, because we wanted to have a little break and get together and have some refreshments over here, and we have our afternoon meeting too on living the life. So we're going to stop it here and enjoy a little bit of brotherhood and getting together, and then we'll continue on with living the life.
Okay.
Merry Christmas.